For 3.2, we're solving by the square root method. So our key terms, if we only have one variable with the same exponent in an equation, we can solve the equation normally. For example, x squared plus 3 equals 2x squared minus 5. We have one variable x with the same exponent 2. Or 4x cubed minus 5 equals 10 minus x cubed. We have one variable, it's x, and our exponent is the same, it's cubed. For the last step of solving, we would have to take the root of whatever exponent we have. In our case, we will only be working with squares, so we will always be doing the square root as our last step. Don't forget, when we take the square root, our answer is always a positive negative answer. So, for example 1, we already have x isolated to one side. So now we have to take the square root of both sides. So that would give us x equals positive negative square root of 15. And that's our answer for that first one. B, we need to get that 2 away from x. We do that by dividing both sides by 2. So our 2's cancel. We get x squared equals 40 divided by 2 is 20. And then we take the square root of both sides. So we get x equals, our answer here is going to be a little different. Instead of just positive and negative square root of 20, we're actually going to break down 20. So some factors of 20, square root of 4, and square root of 5. The reason we're breaking this down, we know what the square root of 4 is. It's 2. Square root of 5, we don't know what that is. So our answer is positive and negative 2 square root of 5. Now your calculators, or the calculators that we have in class, will do that for you. All right, try C for yourself. So, solving equations, we need to move our constant first. So the opposite of subtracting 5. Add 5 on both sides. 4x squared equals 37. Divide by 4 on both sides. So we get x squared equals 37 over 4. And then we take the square root. So we would get x equals positive negative. Now we don't know what the square root of 37 is. Because it's a prime number, we can't break it down. So that will stay the square root of 37. But we do know the square root of 4 is 2. And that's our answer. Alright, so now we have variables on both sides. We have 3x squared on the left and 2x squared on the right. I prefer to move my smaller coefficient term. So 2 is smaller, so I'm going to move 2x squared by doing the opposite and subtracting it on both sides. So then we get x squared equals 10. Take the square root, x equals positive, negative. Now 10 only factors to 2 and 5. Neither of those are perfect squares, so we just leave our answer as positive and negative square root of 10. All right, when we look at B, similar idea. I want to move my smaller variable term, so that would be 5x squared. And I have to move it because we have variables on both sides. So subtract 5x squared on both sides, making sure to line up your variables. So the 5x squareds cancel, 2 equals x squared, and then that minus 4 comes down. Now I need to move the negative 4, so I add 4. So 6 equals x squared. We take the square root, positive, negative, square root of 6 equals x. Now we'd like our variable to come first, so we're just going to rewrite that as x equals positive, negative, square root of 6. All right, example 3. Move the negative 3 by adding 3 on both sides. 7x squared equals negative 8. Divide both sides by 7. So x squared equals negative 8 over 7. Now we square root, and this is where we bring in our last lesson of complex numbers. So x equals, we know we're going to have positive, negative. Now so positive, negative, 8 can break down to the square root of 2 and the square root of 4. 4 is a perfect square, and we know that that is 2. So we're going to have 2, because it's the square root of negative 8, I, and then we still have the square root of 2. Now, 7 is also not a perfect square. So in our denominator, we have this square root of 7. But we cannot have a square root in our denominator. We have to rationalize it. And we do that by multiplying our numerator and denominator by the square root of 7. So what that does, x equals positive, negative 2i. We take 2 times 7, which is 14, over the square root of 7 times the square root of 7 cancels to give us just 7. No square root in the denominator. You know, that one is tricky, so let's look at another example. So we have 2/3 x squared equals -8. So to get rid of a fraction, we multiply by the reciprocal. So we get x squared equals -8 times 3 is -24 over 2. We can reduce that. X squared equals -12. We take the square root. X squared equals positive, negative. 12 can break down into square root of 3, square root of 4. The square root of 4 is 2. So 2, we have negative, so we need our I, and then we're left with square root of 3. So here's some tips. Get your variables on one side and your constants on the other, then solve normally. Remember, your answer may have an I in it if you're taking the square root of a negative number at the end. And lastly, your answer must always have a positive negative next to it. Otherwise, you will lose points. So for today's assignment, 1 through 7 odd, 11, and 12.